Hello, welcome to Module 6. Today we're looking at managing our thinking. So far we've covered the foundations, the body and our nervous system and how these elements connect and affect our experience of the world. In our last module we met these two parts of our thinking, our amygdala and our prefrontal cortex. What we're aiming to do today is to strengthen the prefrontal cortex and soothe our amygdala more effectively. Let's be clear, the amygdala is very important and very useful in true threat situations. For example, a car coming towards us or someone aggressively shouting in our face. However, it can also take over in situations that are purely a perceived threat, situations where we're actually quite safe, but the threat feels real. These are the times we need to manage it better, or it may drive us to make unhelpful decisions or take unhelpful actions. Let's also remember from our model that we are not a head on a stick, that the nervous system is impacting which part of our brain is being fired up. So, one of the most effective strategies to thinking clearly and helpfully is to lower or calm our nervous system. Previous modules covered this, if you need a refresh. Before we jump in today, let's briefly return to the idea of attention, also from an earlier module. Quick refresh, if we think of attention like a torch, what the torch shines on is what we are focusing on. And what we focus on is really important. It creates our conscious experience of right now and therefore the life we are leading. Let's widen the metaphor a little and imagine that torch can be held by either the amygdala or the PFC. Which brain is in charge of the torch will determine what it's shining on. And, as you may have already noted, there are many factors and triggers which determine which brain gets to hold the torch, including our nervous system regulation, the people around us, our environment, how well our foundations are nourished, and then these lead to the messages and rules and stories we tell ourselves. When the amygdala gets hold of the attention torch, it will likely shine it on something in the future or in the past. As a protective brain, it gives high priority to potential threats that we need to worry about, pertaining to our relationships, our health, ourself, or possibly upcoming events. Its demands can feel very urgent and very important, so when the amygdala shines its torch, it can feel very seductive to follow it. Unless we're attending mindfully with purpose and choice, we will automatically go where the torch shines and give our attention, energy and time to that. And yet a lot of the time we really don't need to attend to the thing it's showing us at all. Think about being able to grab that torch back. This is where true power lies, being able to guide your attention. Of course, there are times when there will be things on the future horizon we do need to attend to. Our ability to anticipate things is part of the human survival system, to be able to look ahead and plan. No other mammals can anticipate. So we can shine the torch on the future events that need some activity from us in the present and do whatever is needed, like putting petrol in a car. But often the torch is shining ahead to no real helpful end. It's just imagining a whole load of yucky outcomes, trying to bulletproof and make everything certain. What a waste of time and energy. The art of noticing where your attention is and bringing it back to now is the practice of mindfulness, choosing to be present on purpose, grabbing your torch and purposefully moving it away from imagining an event in another time period and shining it on what's happening around you or within you right now. This is one way we can manage our thinking, getting our PFC to take charge of the torch when the amygdala has snatched it or it's just rolled away from us. Managing our attention is a huge life skill and is truly worth practicing. So, let's look at part 1 of our strategies today, ways to strengthen the prefrontal cortex. How to get that new CEO more in charge, more confident and with a stronger grip on the torch. In order to strengthen your PFC, you need to cultivate a sense of self, as this, in essence, is what your PFC is. Firstly, let's name your PFC after you. Give it your name. My example's on the screen. And now let's explore who you are today in this chapter of your life. This is obviously a culmination of all the years gone past, but remember, you get to decide what you carry into this chapter and what you leave behind. Let's explore what's important to you right now. Who do you want to be and how do you want to show up? This sense of identity. This could perhaps be described by the roles we play or the values we hold. Imagine yourself as a diamond with different sides, or a pizza cut into different size slices. Those sides or slices are not divided into equal parts, but instead a variety of sizes. Each is an identity you hold, such as a parent, a partner, a sibling, a son or daughter, or your professional self. What are the different parts of you right now? I invite you to draw a circle, a pizza, and divide it up into slices. Each slice is a part of you. Label each part and give the slice the size that feels right to you at this time in your life. I have an example of my pizza here to help. Feel free to pause the video whilst you do this exercise. Now let's add some toppings to your pizza. Your values, ways that help you navigate how you show up within each of your identities. Each of us hold different values. We tend to gravitate towards people who have the same or similar values to us. Your vibe attracts your tribe. But be mindful that whatever value you want to attribute to an identity is totally yours and not dictated by your society, your gender, the patriarchy, or school or family, etc. That you're not putting it on there as that's what mum values or your culture deems important. Make sure it is your wild, authentic self that chooses the value you write down. Quick side note, it can be really hard to know what the hell your values are when starting from a blank page, especially if we're still young and our PFC is still growing. So please be kind to yourself if you find this activity hard, because it is hard. So, here then are some ideas to help generate your values. What do you value in other people? Maybe at work, or in friends, or even celebrities. How might you like to be talked about at your funeral? What do you already know is important to you in your role as parent, wife, professional, etc.? Ask a loved one or a trusted other, what do you see important within me? They may be able to help you here and tell you a lot more about you than you can see for yourself. Or you could do this quiz. So here's a link that can be a good starting place to give you a feel for a few values. It's possible you may initially prescribe different values for different roles and identities. More likely though, you'll find a few that permeate throughout your whole self, all your slices. Ultimately, you want to be able to list your top 3 across the board. So, pause the video, take a moment to consider your identity and the values that go with it, and come back once you've sketched these out a little more. Now you have your top 3 values, and you have full permission to adapt them as you learn more about yourself. With these values, you now have modes, ways to show up when things get tricky, a blueprint to follow, an MO if you like. These values will give you a directional compass of how to manage your emotional self. For example, you may now know you can manage your amygdala with integrity, so you may think that it's important for you to be civil or the bigger person during an interaction and choose to not badmouth or hurt another. Or it may be kindness, so you choose to look after your amygdala and talk kindly to yourself when you're scared rather than belittle or bully yourself. It also gives you a connection to your sense of self, as when you choose this mode, you're acting in a way much more aligned to the person you believe yourself to be, or at least would love to be, want to be, rather than a reactive stranger we can be when we're triggered. All of this then feeds back into our sense of self, helping us grow stronger, creating a positive cycle. Of course, it's not always going to be easy to do the things in your valued way. We're fundamentally emotional beings and fallible humans. But you are a work in progress, and what you practice, you get better at. For some of you, this will be the first time you've ever thought about yourself in this way. It may feel awkward or uncomfortable, or you may be a complete unknown to yourself. And that's okay. This isn't just jot it down and that's who we are and off we go. This is a gentle exploration, a building up, a layering up, experimenting, practicing, feeding back to yourself. You will get to know yourself more over time if you keep listening. So practice those values, see how they feel. An interesting thought to bear in mind here is a Buddhist idea of the near and far enemy. When we value, for example, kindness and want to act within this value, the far enemy of this may be something like heartlessness or nastiness. It's the complete opposite of our valued action, and we will absolutely know when we're acting way out of our values. But there is also a near enemy to each value, a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you like. This is when our amygdala gets hold of our value and subverts it in a way that ostensibly could look like the value, but really isn't, and will cause us some sort of distress. With kindness, for example, it could be self-sacrifice. We're being kind to others at the expense of ourselves. Or pity, feeling sorry for someone in a way that creates a sense of superiority rather than a true feeling of equality and shared humanity. Be aware of that near and far enemy of your top 3 values. Okay, so we've got that going on with building our sense of self, building up your PFC. And remember, you can name your cortex after yourself because this is you, and you are now in charge. So let's move to part 2, managing or soothing your amygdala. As you may well be aware now, together with the nervous system, it's the prefrontal cortex, that PFC, that will execute the managing and soothing. Hence why we need to know that part well and its methods. So do not skip the first part here, part 1. To effectively manage the amygdala, you also need to befriend it. So last module, I asked you to create your amygdala, who they are, how they show up, the sort of unhelpful thinking styles they use, so that you can now notice and go, oh, hello amygdala, I see you. So please also make sure that this piece of work is in place before moving on. Rocky's amygdala is a monkey called Claude. Let's be clear, it's really hard to access your prefrontal cortex if your amygdala is loud and hijacking you. If you're deep in state 2, then the cortex is offline completely. You can't think your way out of high distress. The body needs to calm first. But if it's a mild or even moderate distress or discomfort, you might just have enough prefrontal cortex to be able to hear its guidance. So, all the following strategies have assumed you have initially calmed the system enough to connect with your PFC. So, how can we talk to our amygdala to help soothe its reactions? Here's a simple formula to use. Acknowledge it, however, manage it, and now distract it. Acknowledge it. It's always important to acknowledge our amygdala, to hear our feelings, our reactions. Never suppress it, never write it off, never push it away. Always acknowledge it. You may even write things down to reflect on later, but at the very least, just hear what your fear is telling you. This may look like, okay, I hear you're worried about going to this meeting, or I know things feel uncertain at the moment. We don't ever want to dismiss our own reactions. They need hearing. Not acting on, but hearing, or they will only come back stronger or louder if they feel dismissed. They are a signal, not a directive. Hear, but don't act. Once we've acknowledged the worry or fear, we then use our magic pivot word, however. This allows us to gently move our attention away from the fear and onto an alternative thought. For example, I hear you're worried about going to the meeting, however. This is now our jumping off point to manage our emotions, and we can choose from at least 3 different approaches. The first approach is to challenge. Challenging its unhelpful thinking style. Last session, I asked you to go through those unhelpful thinking styles and start to notice which ones your amygdala tends towards. You may commonly hear it use terms like should or ought to or must. This style suggests we're working from someone else's agenda. A should or must do means it's an outdated rule or belief we've sponged up from someone or somewhere else, and it isn't our true decision, so challenge it. Or it may use binary terms like never, always, everyone, no one, good, bad. These terms are ways our amygdala can think quickly and not have to pay attention to detail. It oversimplifies, and this can be very harmful and often inaccurate. Very few things are black or white, most things sit in the grey. Or maybe your amygdala tends to personalise situations and makes you the centre of every event when actually you're not even in the picture. Move the spotlight away. Or maybe it's catastrophising, offering you the worst case scenario when actually right now you're completely safe and have no need to deep dive into all the amygdala's unnecessary, scary imaginings. Allow yourself, your PFC, to step in and challenge. Ask your amygdala, is that really true? Or why in the world do you think I need to do or imagine that? It's okay to say no and push back on our own thoughts, or call it out for its generalisations or outdated or bigoted thinking, or even just laugh at the rubbish it sometimes throws out. Oh, come on, does that ever actually happen? Critical thinking is a vital life skill, being able to pull apart information we're presented with, and this includes the information our own heads present us with. The power of no is also really important, and sometimes our amygdala feels worried about saying no to things because one of its greatest fears is rejection, so it demands we people please and do things that we should or ought to. How we say no is obviously very important and to be done with consideration. And then it can be a very, very helpful word. Explore any situation where you feel obliged to do something, where you feel resistance or reluctance, as you may be working out of your amygdala. Be able to say no to your own self and others. The second method is nurturing your amygdala, being empathic and understanding. This is a form of reparenting. When we become the older sibling or the parent or maybe the compassionate CEO or boss, we choose to look after our emotional self. It's kicking off because it's scared and thinks we're under threat. But you are able to look around and reassure it that right here, right now, we are okay. You may want to deeply acknowledge the things it's scared about. I know you're worried about the meeting coming up, and yes, it feels overwhelming. However, we have everything we need in place to do this. Or, I can see you're scared around this. However, we are capable. Being able to go towards our scared emotional self and give it some compassion, give it a hug. This is where visualization can be really useful if you've created an avatar of your amygdala, such as hugging it, putting a blanket around it, soothing it, stroking it. It might be putting it in a lovely hammock somewhere or pop it up on a cloud. It might be singing to it. If you sing out a worry, it's amazing how much it takes the power out of them. It might be making a joke out of it, just being silly. The final approach is to be firm with it. And so this again is another sort of parenting style, or perhaps sort of being the firm boss, but being more strict and taking the power out of it that way. It's not dismissing it. We're not at any point saying, oh, be quiet. We're like, yep, okay, I know you're scared. However, you really don't need to be scared, and we have been through this enough now. It's putting a boundary in, shutting things down very gently. Or you can use stronger language, of course, and swear at it and rip that torch away. And it might be, I know you're scared, however, it's not helpful to focus on this anymore. Enough already. Rocky's amygdala is a monkey called Claude, and so he might say enough already to Claude and then visualise pushing him off a cliff, or caging him, or shoving a banana in his mouth, or making him tiny and putting him in his pocket. Enough already, Claude. Your brain has no boundaries, so you can get as creative as you like. You can go cartoon-style violence or more kind and nurturing methods. Using aggressive imagery is nothing to be concerned about. Your amygdala will always be okay. Anything that creates a shift in the thinking away from your amygdala is valid. You can even draw these out if it helps. Whatever method you use, challenging, nurturing, or firm, with words or with imagery, the final step is to then refocus, to distract it. Our pivot phrase here is "and now," which allows enough disruption to guide our attention onto something else, to move our torch. Refocus or distraction activities can be anything. The easiest refocus is to use your environment around you and to be mindfully present, so purposefully bringing your attention to the same place as your body. But it can be anything that takes the attention away from your amygdala's focus, from its grip. Examples could be focusing on what's happening right now, so using any of the body work we did in previous modules, such as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise or rectangle breathing. It could be mindful anything, so mindful walking or drinking or listening. For example, you're walking through the park. Invite your amygdala along with you. Can you see that lovely tree? Come on, have a look at this tree with me. Look at all the leaves on the tree, almost like you might do with a small child. Anything that uses your thinking brain also works, such as doing the alphabet backwards, 100 minus 7, and then keep subtracting 7, or a crossword, or name 10 things beginning with the letter M, etc. A challenging cerebral exercise immediately moves you into the cortex. Or just move it to whatever you are actually doing. A piece of work, watching TV, listening to your friend chat, etc. Bring your attention back to now. Now, this may seem very confusing and a lot to take on at this moment. It is, however, quite a simple process once the idea is practiced and rehearsed. You'll find as you do it more, you gravitate towards certain visuals or phrases that make sense to you and are most effective to you, so the formula becomes slicker. Just stick with it. I'll leave you with some examples of this process to help you understand it a little better. See you in Module 7.